Hello everyone, happy Christmas, happy Yule, happy Winter Solstice. Welcome along to this very special episode. I hope you've enjoyed listening to these specials as much as I've enjoyed putting them together. A massive thank you to Jules Bailey for A, taking me on my very first paranormal investigation, and B, for joining me in the debrief a couple of weeks ago, about a week and a half ago. What did you think? What did you think of that? What did you think of the explanations? Without sounding too Danny Robbins on Uncanny, are you team believer, team skeptic, or team not sure? Well, if you are team skeptic or team not sure, I hope this episode nudges you towards team believer maybe. Because have I got some stories for you, stories that have been sent in by you, my lovely, lovely explorers. Some of you lovely listeners who have listened to me over the past year and a bit have sent me in your spooky tales. Now, I did this at Halloween and I managed to save a couple back. Well, actually more than a couple, because this episode is all about stories, about paranormal encounters, subtle things that might go on in the house, things that make you think, what was that? What I like to call the reality of the paranormal. These are not poltergeists, these are not demons, these are very subtle hints as to what lies beyond that veil. If you are listening in the UK, then you will know that this is a very traditional time to tell ghost stories. If you are outside of the UK and this is news to you, well, welcome. Welcome to this very quaint English tradition of telling ghost stories around this festive season. And I couldn't let the Christmas, Winter Solstice, Yule special go by without some more of your ghost stories. So let us start with someone very dear to my heart. You have heard from him once this year already on my Scotland episode, while I was stood in the Lochbuie standing stones doing my piece to microphone. He was stood in the distance, or rather in the corner of the field, trying to shelter from the rain, looking very bored and wanting to go and get a coffee. So here he is, once more, is my partner, Mr. Simon.
When I was younger, I lived in an old Edwardian house. And apparently it had some history of ghosts, which I never really saw up until one night when I was on the phone. And I was, I'd say, a teenager, very early teens, 12, maybe 13. And I was on the phone at the bottom of the stairs. I was just talking to my friend. And I was just looking around, and then I looked up at the top of the stairs, and out of the corner of my eye, well, not really the corner to be honest, just saw, could only be described as a woman in a white cloak, which was translucent, very flowy fabric, walking past the top of the stairs into what would have been my room. And at first I was a little bit taken back, questioned what I'd just seen. And then I suppose I made sense of it in my mind, like, well, I couldn't have seen that because that doesn't exist, maybe, I don't know. And plus I had someone on the phone with me, so I carried on the conversation, didn't really think of it after that.
Simon, my other half, I defy you to find anyone who is as blasé or nonchalant about seeing a ghost. Every time I hear that, I just say to him, but you saw it? And he said, no, well, I might not have though. It might have been just my imagination. It's just like, okay, fine. But even today, even now when stuff happens, I say to him, what about that? And he has no other explanation apart from it being a bit spooky or something that he can't explain, but still won't acknowledge the idea of it being paranormal. It's quite funny, it's quite bizarre. So yeah, you can imagine me doing this and him being the way he is. It makes an interesting dynamic. But just going back to that house quickly, Simon grew up in that house, and over the years I have moved in and we've moved out and we've moved back in and we've moved out, in between travelling and saving up. So I've got lots of memories of that house, and I have to say that there was never anything ominous. There was never anything spooky. I mean, I wasn't really in touch with anything back then. All I would say is that in that old Victorian, or rather Edwardian, end of terraced house, where the bathroom is downstairs through the back of the kitchen, when I would visit the loo in the night, you'd have to switch on all the lights as you went through the house, which was fine. But coming back, turning those lights back off as you ran up some very steep stairs and having to turn the lights off at the bottom and going up those stairs in darkness, I would always envisage someone reaching out from the gloom to grab my feet as I ran back upstairs to the bedroom. I hope that wasn't too disconcerting for those of you who get up in the middle of the night to use the facilities. Hopefully there'll be no ghoulish hands reaching out from the banister or the depths of darkness from downstairs when you return to bed. And if that thought had never crossed your mind, I can bet your bottom dollar it certainly will now. I'm really sorry about that. The next story comes from someone that I know. This person is my auntie Sylvia. In the Halloween episode, you heard my cousin Charlie talk about some experiences that she had had in both her house in London and the family house in France. The tone of Charlie's story was, frankly, terrifying. That grizzled hand brushing her face, and she screamed and ran outside to wait for her parents to come back from a fireworks display. She was caught in the pouring rain for about 2 hours because she refused to go back inside the house. This story is from my auntie Sylvia's point of view, and I want to just highlight the difference in tone. With Charlie's story, it was scary. It was really spooky. There was a menacing undertone. However, with my auntie Sylvia's story, there's a lightness to it. There is a completely different feel to how she explains and how she describes her experiences. And I think it's really interesting because my cousin and my auntie are very different characters. And I think the feel of each of their stories is quite reflective of their characters. With my auntie Sylvia, her story almost feels like she's talking about a friend. It's like she's talking about something that she's sharing the space with rather than something invading her space. So here is my auntie Sylvia and her story about the house in France.
Hello, Matt. 30 years ago, we bought an old farmhouse deep in the countryside in rural France. It has many original features, one of which is an old wooden staircase going up 3 flights in the centre of the house. One morning, several years ago, my nephew and his girlfriend were staying with us for the holidays. I'd got up quite early and was sitting quietly reading, waiting for somebody to stir so I could get on and make breakfast. I heard somebody run down the stairs, but nobody came into the kitchen. I looked out, there was nobody in the halls. I crept upstairs just to see if there was anybody out and about. But there was no sign of anybody, and all the bedroom doors were shut, and nobody appeared until at least an hour later. On 2 other occasions, both my son and daughter have heard the same noise of somebody running down the stairs. It isn't the odd creak, it actually sounds like somebody who should appear at any moment. I've heard it again several years later. It's not particularly scary because it always happens in the daytime, and the sounds like a young girl running down the stairs, so it doesn't sound particularly menacing. However, both my mum and my daughter, when sleeping in the same room on different occasions, woke up in the middle of the night with the sensation of a man sitting on the end of their bed. A house like this, no doubt, is full of stories of all the people that have lived here over the decades, but remains a happy house that we all enjoy coming to.
I could let this music play forever. I think it's just beautiful. I have spent plenty of time at that house in France. There's been plenty of summers where we've gone over and we've spent a week or so there. And it is idyllic. It's gorgeous. You can feel the history in the bones of that property. And I know exactly the stairs that they are talking about. I have never experienced anything while I have been there. But these stairs look ancient. And you just wonder how many people have run up and down these stairs over the 500, 600, 700 years that this building has been standing. And just a little update on that one. In the Halloween episode, I said that house was between 300, 400, 500 years old. Actually, it seems to go back much, much further. At least 500 years old, possibly 900 years old. Now, there is a bonus episode which is going out alongside this episode. Please listen to it because it is me and my Auntie Sylvia talking about hers and Charlie's experience. I was WhatsApping her for some dates of the house. I wanted to know how old the house actually was for the purpose of this recording, this episode that you're listening to now. And she says something in that message that made me stop everything. And I got her on my recording suite and I recorded the conversation with her. Listen to that conversation because in that bonus episode, I play her what Jono picked up in the Halloween episode. And let's just say there are some confirmations. So do listen to that. And yeah, Auntie Sylvia really shed some light on some things. But just going back to that property in France, it's stunning. It's in the middle of nowhere. At the back of the property, there's an old demolished abbey. The bishop or the mitre used to stay at that property. And as I said in the Halloween episode, he used to give communion through an arrow slit window in the kitchen. The whole place, the whole area is steeped in history. Very quiet. There's no street lights. Usually when we go to France, it's in August and it's just in time for the Perseid meteor shower. And because there's absolutely no light pollution where the house is, we all go out in the back garden and lay out on the sun loungers looking up into the sky where the Milky Way is as clear can be, and we just watch the shooting stars. It's really atmospheric. It's a beautiful property. And yeah, I think it's lovely that Sylvia points out that, yes, this stuff does happen there, but it's still a place where the family love to go every single year. And it holds great, deep memories within the family. Okay, let's go to another story. This one comes in from a listener. Thank you so much for sending these in, guys. Sarah from Bristol sent this one in. And it's got all the hallmarks of a scary story. It's got nuns, it's got old school institutions, big old houses. So here is Sarah's story.
This is my story of when I saw a ghost. I think it's the only time I've ever seen one, and it's lived with me forever. So I'm currently 56 years old. This happened when I was 17 years old. I worked in a nursing home in Bath, and it was run by the Sisters of Charity. The Sisters of Charity wore white habits, and they wore white headscarves when they were working. So it was a big old house, and it had 3 floors. So this one night, I was working nights, and I was on with a friend of mine. Every 2 hours, we had to do a round of the whole nursing home. Previously to this, on Middle 28, people used to, like the women that were there, used to say, oh, the lady with the white came in and she took our, like whatever it was, toy, or she's moved it. And we thought, oh, they've just got dementia. So this one night, We're walking up the stairs from ground 28 to middle 28, and there's a huge, great big mirror that is in the middle part of the staircase where it turns. So as we were walking up, we were able to see into the staircase, and we could look up and go up to the next staircase. As we were walking up, we were chattering away like mad, and this figure, basically, this white woman in white, we could see her in the mirror. She walks across, and both of us said at the same time, "Shh, Sister Geraldine's there." And she'd walked into a room that had no other entrance. It was just a room, and there was no exit from that room. As we walked up the stairs, we started being quiet rather than that constant chattering. And we went into the room, and there was no nun there. And it was just like, oh my God, this is completely and utterly freaked us out. So then it made us really think, wow, these women that we thought had dementia actually were talking the truth. There was a woman in white.
Sarah, thank you so much for that story. How atmospheric was that? The way that I choose to interpret Sarah's story, that when she saw the nun, the way it went into the office that had no other exits, and when they went into it, the nun had inexplicably just disappeared, was that nun was just coming back to say hello and just to check up on things, make sure things were okay. And I think it's quite a sign of the times that Sarah and her colleagues just thought, oh, they've got dementia, it's fine, no worries. I think things might be quite different now, but yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. Really, really appreciate your contribution, and yeah, amazing story. Thank you very, very much. Right, are you ready for another one? Are you ready for another story from someone else in Bristol? I seem to have a crew of people in Bristol listening to me and sending in your stories, so thank you so very, very much. Let's have a listen to Leslie's story and see if we get spooked out as much as she was.
When I was about 40, living in Bristol, we'd been there since I was 25, so quite a while. Little things that I dismissed, that didn't feel happy with, but I was sat in the lounge one night when I heard a smash of a glass in the kitchen. So I shouted out, "What's gone there? What have you smashed?" No reply. So I went out, only to find that nobody was there and no glass. It freaked me out a little bit. Although there was similar incidents, but I never felt threatened by any of it. But when that glass broke, that did freak me a little bit.
Have you ever found yourself doing something meditative, like, I don't know, watching the TV or even driving, something where you sort of half switch off? And I'm not advocating to switch off while you're driving at all, but have you ever been in that phase of state where you're not concentrating on anything in particular and suddenly you just hear something, whether it be a voice or a name or a sound? And I wonder if that might be what Leslie was experiencing there. There's something called exploding head syndrome. A rather unpleasant term of phrase, to be honest, but it is something I had experienced, where you're in that sort of in-between sleep and awake stage, and you suddenly hear just an explosion. Some people hear sounds, other sounds. Some people hear names or voices. But this is usually linked to stress. It is actually a sleeping disorder. It usually affects people when they are stressed or if they're on medication. So I wonder if when Leslie heard this smashed glass, she was under a significant amount of stress at that time. Now, that's not me poo-pooing her experience at all. I think it's really fascinating because she said that there were other things that were going on in the house that didn't necessarily put her off. So I'm just offering a potential solution to this inexplicable smashing glass sound that she heard in the kitchen, that no one was there. I love these things. I love these these stories where you are so convinced that you hear something, you go in and fully expecting, like Leslie did, and you're expecting to see glass on the floor, and there being absolutely nothing there, even to the point where she shouts out to the other people in her house, "What have you done?" They're expecting them to have dropped something. I wonder if you've experienced anything like this. I'd love to know if you have, or if you can relate to any of the stories that we've covered so far on today's very special Winter Solstice episode. Okay, let's just change the tone slightly here. Let's just shift gears. Winter solstice, Christmas, this time of year can be really, really difficult. People have lost loved ones. It might be their first Christmas without someone, might be their second or third, and it might be very, very difficult for people. I want to just highlight that sometimes these experiences that we have don't always have to be, in inverted commas, paranormal. They don't have to be something odd or spooky or scary. Sometimes these feelings that we receive, these experiences that we have, can actually be quite comforting. They can be signs that our loved ones are around us all the time. And even if you are not someone that picks up on this stuff every single day, I think stories like Christian's story just show that our loved ones are around. And if we look out for the signs, they'll let us know that they are there. And this sign is pretty amazing.
My father passed away on the 8th of March, 2023. I drove back to Sussex to be with the family on that day. And in the evening, I thought I'll pop to the local shop to pick up some cigarettes and a bottle of wine. And it was on a Wednesday that day. And for some reason, I thought I would buy a lottery ticket at the same time. As I was walking out of the shop with this ticket on the date of his death, I looked down at the numbers. The first two numbers were 3 and 9, and the last number was 56. My father's date of birth was the 3rd of September, 1956. That whole experience spooked me, partly because it was on the day of his death, but then out of all the things that can happen in the world, what would the chances be that you buy something as simple and silly as a lottery ticket, and then you're presented with his date of birth sitting there straight in front of your eyes?
I was just gobsmacked, flawless. What a sign! What I would give to get a sign as clear as that. I'm not even going to bother analysing that, because that is just amazing. Thank you, Christian, so much for sending the story of the day that your father passed, and I'm so sorry that you had to experience that. And thank you so much for sharing your story. Now on to another story which is very personal to someone that I know, and someone who has been on the podcast as well. Nicola, the person that runs my face-to-face circle, also appeared on episode 12. And thinking about it, she actually appeared also on Jono's Halloween episode. So Nicola is getting quite the airtime on this podcast. I should be paying her maybe. But Nicola also sent me in a recording of a time when she had an encounter with someone who was able to shed some light on things that might happen in her future. This is a really lovely story, and another example that paranormal activity doesn't have to be scary. It can be very gentle. It can be really powerful. It can be really heartfelt and have a lot of impact on our lives. Even these fleeting moments that might last 3 or 4 minutes, not even that, will have an impact on the rest of our lives. So let's take a trip to the coast where Nicola tells us of her experience.
I worked for many years on my local seafront at least 15 years ago, and it was the middle of one summer season, and it was a beautiful day, and it had been a long day, a hard day, And I just took a moment out to go and sit on the sort of picnic benches that we always put outside for customers. And as I sat there, just sort of gazing out, this lady, slightly older lady, in her 70s, late 70s maybe, just asked if she would be all right if she could sit down beside me. And I said, of course, it's a hot day, please do sit down. Anyway, we started to chat, and she had said to me how that she'd lived in London, but they had come for a day trip to the coast when she was a little girl. And she'd said to her parents, oh, I want to go to, can't remember, this tea room down Market Row or wherever it was. And her parents said, no, darling, you know, you've never been here before. Never at all. I don't know what you're talking about. But she said, I said to my parents, I know where it is. I've been to the tea room. She said, so I then led them down these side streets all over the place. She said, I knew exactly where I was going. And she said, and then we came to what I remember was the tea shop. And my parents, she said, were so lovely. And they said, because I just couldn't let it go, she said. And so we went inside and they asked them and they said, oh, no, that was a long time ago, over sort of, 80 years or more ago. Once upon a time we did hear it was a tea shop. So she said, my parents just looked at me and said, there you are, darling. So it was one of, as far as they were concerned, life's mystery. Was this just another funny little child? I, of course, was totally fascinated by this story, that she had come there as a young girl, a young child, and remembered going to tea shop there, a tea shop that had been gone for over 80 years. We carried on chatting and continued to say, she said, well, actually, I was a spiritual medium for many years in London, and I worked in the West End, she said, and I saw many stars would come to me and I'd give them readings. She said, but that was almost a lifetime ago, she said to me. And then she looked at me and she said, but I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I said, well, yes, I am, very interested in all spiritual matters. She said, I know. Then she gave me a few little pointers and a few things, of which I thought, okay, and a potential of things that could happen to me, all of which, since that meeting, have all come to pass. Anyway, we chatted and chatted for a while, and then she turned to me and she said, I must go now. She said, I'll never come back here, she said, because I haven't got very long before I go back home, because I have cancer, she said, so I don't have very long to go. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. She stood up, walked away from the bench, and just went round the corner into the side street. I myself thought, oh, that's silly, that's so silly. I must just ask her what her name was and introduce myself. I got up literally moments after her. I turned the corner at the end of our building. Nobody at all was there. She wasn't walking very fast. I looked down the side street, nothing. I even ran to the end of the side street. Nobody, nothing. I wandered back to work and I walked in and I said to one of the other staff members, I said, did you see I was talking to a lady on the bench out there? And the staff member said, no, Nicola, no, I didn't see you talking to anybody. She said, and I did see you out there all the time. She said, as it's been so busy, she said, I didn't want to disturb you. I thought you looked so like you were lost in your thoughts and, you were smiling away sometimes. And I just thought I would leave you just to have that moment on your own. I most certainly wasn't on my own, and it was a true experience. This moment we had together, quite unexplained. When it came to the end of the season, and often coastal towns, it's a bit like the tumbleweed almost floats down the seafront. I could almost in my ears still hear that conversation I had with her, the lady whose name I never got.
I wonder how many times this has happened to everyday folk, to you or I, where we have a conversation with someone and they may not be of this world. Who knows? What a wonderful story, though. What a wonderful experience to have. I am certainly not going to nitpick and go into analysing mode with these stories, because I think these stories are so personal. These stories are so unique to who they belong to. I do find it fascinating that Nicola was having this full-blown conversation with this woman. She gets up and this woman has just disappeared. But the strangest part of the story is that Nicola's colleague, who was looking at her the whole time or had an eye on her the whole time, didn't see this woman. She just saw Nicola looking out and smiling. So, you know, I think it's just fascinating. I think this is just so wonderful. And a glimpse into other possibilities, a glimpse into what might be through the crack, through the veil, not just of terrifying demons and poltergeists and whatever else there might be, but of the light, of the good, of the love. And on that note, we are going to finish on one final tale. This one is from Lynn from Horsham. Now, Lynn didn't want to send a recording in, so I'm going to do my very best to read something that has been passed on from her family to you. My mum spoke of a couple of memories around the death of her grandmother, and this is a story of one of them. It was when my great-grandmother was dying. The family were sitting in the back room of the house, and my great-grandmother was upstairs taking her last breaths. All of a sudden, everyone heard footsteps coming down the side passage. The latch on the back gate, it went up and down many, many times, as if somebody was trying to get in. My grandfather went to see who it was, but there was no one there. The alley was empty. Seeing that nobody was there, he returned to the room where the family were waiting for news of my great-grandmother upstairs on her deathbed. As he sat down and told everyone that there was no one there, everyone heard footsteps moving from the back gate back towards the road. What was it that caused that latch to go up and down so violently? What was it that caused those footsteps? I like to think that it could have been Lynn's great-great-grandparents coming to collect their daughter as she takes her final breath. It's just something that I like to think of. And I just want to remind you that ghost stories are fun. Ghost stories can be scary, but also I think most ghost stories are misinterpreted. I think many stories are tales that actually, if you take a step back, these tales are a reminder that we are not alone, that we are surrounded by our loved ones, that they are here, they give us signs. Whether it's someone's birthday appearing in the numbers of a lottery ticket, of an older woman resting her feet and giving information and advice, apparitions, or sounds we don't understand. Next time you have an experience, just stop and think, is this terrifying or is this something else? Because if you sit with it, I am sure you will feel that it is something much more familiar and much more friendly than you might ever have thought. I am wishing you all a wonderful festive season. This is going out a few days later than I planned because you may be able to hear I have been ill for the past week or so, and I've not been able to have the capacity in my voice to record these little narrations in between the stories that my beautiful, wonderful guests have very kindly shared with us all. So I'm going to take this moment to just Wish you all a wonderful Yule, a wonderful Christmas. Thank you for your support this year. It means the world. It really, really does. We have a small community listening to this podcast every other week, and I really appreciate those listens that I do get. I really appreciate the support. I really appreciate the feedback that I get as well. All is welcome. As we celebrate the longest night of the year, I really hope that these stories have given you something to enjoy, given you something to listen to as you light your candles, as you light your Yule logs. Remember, there's going to be a very short episode where my Auntie Sylvia hears what Jono feels about the house in France and some revelations that he hits spot on, which is quite amazing. So yes, I will see you in 2026. There may be a special episode or something. I might put something together for the New Year's Eve, because that is actually the first. I think my next scheduled day is New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, so there might be something that goes out. I don't know. Well, we'll see if I can put something together. Right, as we go forward into 2026, I want to send you all the love, all the light in the world, and I will see you on the other side. Take care, guys. Bye.